Hello, my name is Ethan Post. I am developing a product on Oracle Apex called FarmPulse360. I have a number of other products I'd like to get to develop right now. I'm in building version 2, or I would say instance 2 of the minimal viable product. So kind of throwing the first whole thing away. I got some good feedback. I'm ready to build something a little bit more sophisticated. It still is going to be a far cry from what I see down the road if the feedback continues to be good and it's worth investing my time. So I have about a 4-week stint here where I'm really only focusing on FarmPulse, and I'll show you what I'm doing today. By the way, I'm trying to put together a group of startup and individuals who have startups, want to do a startup, or founders who are building things on Oracle Apex. If you're familiar with Combinator and their startup school program, it's free. I do recommend you go ahead and do that if you want to, if you really want to see what it's all about. But one thing they do is they publish weekly goals, and you have accountability for those weekly goals. And you also have weekly meetings where you go around and try to help each other solve problems, kind of hold each other accountable as to are you getting the work done that you need to, and have people ask you tough questions about whether your ideas, your marketing, your these other things that you're doing make sense. So I don't think anybody is doing that specifically on Oracle Apex, and that's kind of what I want to do. I know that I would benefit from it. There are tools, things that I need to write, like integration with Stripe, and I'd like to have a module that does that. Maybe that's something you need. Maybe that's something we can collaborate on and work together. But I'm trying to build a group of assets that allow me to release new software applications very quickly. Apex does great, but I need things like custom authentication, solid, works the way I need it to work, and I can roll that out in minutes. Stripe integration, things like that, pay plans, all that kind of stuff. Need all that stuff so I can just focus on building what I need to build quickly and getting something out the door that potentially can generate revenue. Okay, so if you're interested in that, please email me at post.ethan@gmail.com. You can also go to my website to find my contact information. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. My website's really easy. It's ethan.com, but there's dashes between all the letters. The other domain was taken by an Apple guy. I'm not an Apple guy. Okay, I'm an Oracle guy, obviously. Okay, so what we've got here is we're building a farm. Has a lot of different ingredients, and I'm trying to design things that are reusable. So I've built this system called SAS Assets. I hate the word SAS. I'm going to change the name of that, and it's not publicly available. So one benefit of not publicly releasing things, it's really easy to change without making people mad. But it's called SAS Assets, and you can basically generate these kinds of assets, and they have attributes. So it's nothing more than, you could have a bunch of tables for each asset type. You could have a table, but then you've got to build a custom form for each. So what I'm trying to do is build one form that can handle any type of asset in the future, and assets usually don't have a lot of attributes. Right now it can handle up to 9 attributes for an asset, but it's pretty easy to expand. And I know there's potential performance problems down the road with kind of a recursive generic design like this, but I think that those will be good problems to have. So we're not going to worry about that right now. And reusability is really important to me. Like if I have another problem or another problem set where I go, okay, I need these ingredients, and then I'm going to write back-end code that does some work with those ingredients, this is probably the way I'm going to do it, and I'll be able to reuse this form, I'll be able to reuse the code, etc. So let's dig in, and then for the next 4 hours I'm going to work on this, and then I'll shoot a short update at the end of the day to show you what I got done, which probably won't be nearly as much as I wish. So if we just go and look at the design here for the asset table, basically what we have is an asset ID, an asset name, some other columns, whether it's a template or not, and things like that. And then we have these kind of generic label, about, ID, ID type, and val. So on any given attribute, you're either going to be filling out the ID type, which points back to usually another asset ID, although it doesn't have to. It could point to another table in the database. But it's set up on this form to basically look up the asset ID. And then we have the value, which would just be a value. We're always it's always varchar, but we can convert that to number or date. We'll have to do some, we don't have a date type and all that kind of stuff. We'll have to handle that. So we have these attributes. And then what happens is I basically build these things. I build these assets. So, for example, we have a crop operation, and then we put, the start date, end date, is dry ground required, why no? People have loud trucks around here. That's a thing. So anyway, you got these assets, and we build all these kinds of assets. And on our interface, what we want is we want to come to assets, or farming assets, and then we'll have a menu on the left that is going to be each type of asset, or we might make that a submenu up here. So you come to assets and you select one of the types of assets you want to modify, and then you come in and modify it. But this will always be the same form. It'll go from report. Let me go to here. Run that. So we'll have this, we'll have the report form basically. So your asset will be listed here. If you want to create a new one, you'll do that. If you want to go to an existing one, you go to that, and you'll edit it. And those, the first form will be different, obviously a different report, but we're going to try to use this second page for everything. And we basically have all the regions or our fields dynamically being set. They're dynamically appearing and disappearing. So what we have here when we go to page 8511 is we've split out each of those objects into different regions, and then basically we have a server-side condition, where if the label is not null, we're going to show the region. If it is null, we're not going to show the region. The label for whatever appears here is going to be set to that label value, so the ID field, or the label for the value field will be set to the label value. So, this label right here becomes the label for the val1 or ID1. So anyway, right now the form is super ugly, and we're going to apply some CSS attributes. We're going to try to get all the fields working, and I'm going to get this working for power units. And then once I've got it looking beautiful for power units, I know it works for power units, then it's just a matter of adding those initial report forms, report pages for each type of asset. And maybe I can generically do that, but I'm not too worried about that. That's pretty simple and pretty easy. And then they'll just load this page with the appropriate information. So that's what I'm going to be working on, and it's pretty complicated. So it's I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, but the idea that you can build something in a weekend, you can build something in a weekend. Usually you're not going to build anything too complicated or too great in a weekend, at least working by yourself. That's kind of a common joke when someone sees an application you've spent a year on, and they go, oh, I could build that in a weekend. Right. So anyway, long video, and I'll have a short update in about 3 or 4 hours, hopefully, before I go home, and talk to you later.